Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Embry. I am the Director of Marketing here at Travel Media Group, and I want to first thank everyone for taking the time to join me on our first ever TMG virtual roadshow at our first stop, Orlando, Florida, which is very near and dear to our heart because Travel Media Group's headquarters is located right here in Maitland, Florida. So we're very excited to share this presentation with you all. Now, at the end of this event, I will be providing my direct contact information in case you have any follow-up questions with the content that we're going to be sharing today. You can also use the chat feature, which is located right there in your toolbar to type any sort of questions or feedback. We'll be responding to those questions personally following the conclusion of the presentation. Now, also be on the lookout since today's event will feature an interactive poll and would absolutely love your participation in it. So let's get started and introduce you to who will be driving this roadshow today. So let me go ahead. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Ryan Embry. I am the Director of Marketing here at Travel Media Group. And with me today, we have DJ Randolph. DJ, are you there? We have DJ. Might be on mute. You there, DJ?
I sure am. Sorry about that, you guys. Thanks for joining us. Start off a little hitch. Everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll let you start the show, Ryan.
Awesome. DJ is a hospitality solutions buyer for the greater Orlando area. As you can see, he's been doing this for just over 2 years and might be partnering with some of you on this call. So we're really excited. We're going to bring DJ back in at the end of this presentation to kind of wrap up and give us some insights and overview from the market. So let's go ahead and get started. In today's agenda, what we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at travel search for the Orlando market specifically. If we know what our travelers are searching, the better we can help attract and capture them, create occupancy and revenue for us. We're going to look at some reputation trends in the Orlando market. So what does it take to be competitive in your online reputation when travelers are doing that search? And then guest sentiment. What are guests actually saying when they're leaving these reviews, right? Positive, negative, and we're actually going to look into the top 3 and bottom 3 tags in the Orlando market, and that might give us some clues too to this last piece, social media. So how can we use all of this great information that we're about to see today and make it into posts that it's going to again, give us a competitive advantage over the other hotels in our market. And then we're going to bring DJ in back for some market insights and analysis. So we got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump in. Now, the first big piece of Orlando travel search trends should be really, really exciting and great news for everyone in the Orlando market. The search hotels in Orlando is searched 165,000 times per month. That is an increase of 50% year over year. So we knew this was going to be a massive summer when it came to travel and guests and occupancy. And that certainly is showing the case according to Google Analytics and what people are searching. But where are they searching, right? And this one was really fascinating. So a couple other stops that we're going to make on this TMG roadshow is Atlanta and Dallas. And what we decided to do was see how travelers searched TripAdvisor Orlando in comparison to those other markets. And we found that people are actually searching for TripAdvisor Orlando 2 times and 3 times as much as they're searching for TripAdvisor in Atlanta and Dallas. So in some markets, TripAdvisor might not be as relevant, but in this market specifically, it certainly is. So you definitely want to concentrate a good amount of time and reviews on this place in particular. This is where a lot of booking decisions are being made according to the search data. Now, we live in Orlando, right? This town is still owned by the Ears, Mickey Mouse, and Universal and SeaWorld. But the number 1 search topic besides attractions is actually families. I'm sure if you're in the resorts area, that's no surprise to you. But this is an interesting fact because we want to ask ourselves, how can we use this on our social media, even our review responses on our website, to make ourselves look more attractive to the majority of people that are searching for hotels in Orlando? The next thing was things to do, right? Again, we had 2 times the amount of search volume and things to do in Orlando than Dallas and Atlanta. This should tell us a couple things. People are looking obviously you've got the attractions, but maybe they're looking for other things to do, some more attractions. The interesting part about this was if we add a little bit to the very end of that phrase, things to do this weekend, it actually had half the amount of search volume as these other markets. So what this should signal to us is that travelers, when they're coming to Orlando, are doing a lot more research and over a longer span of time. This is not something where they're just on a whim saying, hey, we're coming to fly to Orlando this weekend. They're doing a lot of research. So reviews, social media, very, very important to hotels in this area because they're going to be doing a lot of research before they get to you. And lastly, this is just something that we found absolutely fascinating. Of course, we know the big ticket items right now is inflation, gas going up. We see a 22% year over year increase of the search term free things to do in Orlando, and I'm sure this is just going to go increase more and more. Definitely something that we should signal in our social media strategy, maybe including some attractions, obviously that cost, but maybe might not cost, like our parks and other things like that. So this was super interesting. This is via Google Trends, and this is showing actually where our travelers are searching. And I bet you could have guessed this one, but I think this is really an important map to show. In hotels in Atlanta and Dallas, you see a much more regional search around the state. But in Orlando, it is nationwide. So you're not just trying to reach that regional traveler. In Orlando, we're looking at nationwide, and I would even argue globally, especially now that international travel is starting to slowly come back. We have to keep that in mind when we're responding to our reviews, when we're putting in our social media. We're not just trying to target that one traveler. So let's talk about some reputation trends, right? One thing that we uncovered in our data, and this is all Travel Media Group data, by the way, from here on out. The one thing that we discovered in this data, Orlando is much more competitive than a lot of other markets that we're going to be visiting. So, good or bad, your reputation, a lot of travelers are going to be checking it, and they're going to be looking at your competition as well. So this is the market average right now, 3.84 stars. Again, this is just the market average, 69% of positive reviews, and then 20% of negative. So really, I want us to focus on this slide on pace. How are you pacing when it comes to your competition versus yourself? Are you getting 5 positive reviews per month, but your competition's getting 15? The math just doesn't add up. So you need to have a way to get more and more positive reviews, and based on that search data, try to get them to TripAdvisor somehow. Now, if we look at the top 25, we see an even more competitive picture here. 91%, so more than 9 out of 10 reviews that the hotels in Orlando are getting in the top 25% are positive reviews, and 3% negative reviews. So we get to a place up here where things are so tight that it all becomes around recent data. So you could have a score of a 4.58 or a 4.6. The next thing that your traveler is going to look at is going to be the recent data. What is it telling you? And if they find that one negative review, could be the difference between them booking with you or someone else. But one big opportunity I wanted everyone to notice here is even in the top 25%, hotels still have less than a 70% response rate. This is a huge opportunity that the hotels are missing out on. You need to respond to your reviews, not just obviously responding to the guests, but also there's a lot of SEO value, especially in a place like Orlando where there's a lot of attractions. Let's say your location is near Disney. If somebody in a review mentions that, it serves you to respond to them by saying that exact phrase back, saying, we are so fortunate to have our location near Disney. So when guests, the 165,000 guests that are searching for hotels in Orlando say hotels near Disney, guess whose property has the upper hand? So there's definitely a nuanced skill that comes to this. our professional review response writers know this, and they know how to put you in the best position to capture occupancy. Let's keep moving here. When we look at reputation trends as far as volume, this was super interesting, right? You look at this, the majority, maybe it's not surprising that the majority of reviews are coming from TripAdvisor. 32% of reviews are left. But I think if we look at the big picture, this is really interesting. 62% between Google and TripAdvisor, that's where the review volume is coming in from the Orlando market. Now, luckily, our reputation management program, I know some of the current partners that we're working with now, we work with both TripAdvisor and Google. That's what our reputation management program helps with. But I will say in some of these other places like Booking and Expedia, we know that these OTAs bring a lot of bookings, but if the volume isn't there, a negative review that sits at the top of your page could have a lasting impact. So make sure you're monitoring all those sites, because if a one-star review sits there on Expedia or hotels.com and you're not getting a lot of volume, that means it could sit there for a very long time. So let's start to turn towards sentiment. So how are they feeling? What are they saying in these reviews? TripAdvisor, again, is the most positive of the places in the Orlando market. 83% of the reviews that are left leave with positive sentiment. I think what this should tell hotels is that if you're not seeing a lot of positive reviews on TripAdvisor, it could be a problem on some of these other ones. So make sure you're monitoring that there. Now let's move into tags. So another thing that our professional team of review response writers do is they actually take the time to go through each one of their reviews that they're responding to and assign sentiment tags. So we've been able to do this with the Orlando market, and you could see the top 3 positive sentiment tags. Attractions, as we know, that's no surprise. It's the number one thing search. Location, this is huge. So in your website, on your social media, maybe you want to mention what's around you, restaurants, different things, to get people excited about your location. And lastly is breakfast. And this one was kind of surprising because this is really the one tag that I feel is still very, very wide on the spectrum right now. Some hotels in this area are still doing breakfast like they did pre-COVID, breakfast buffet. They've got a breakfast area and they're able to manage that. Other ones might not have the staff to run a full breakfast right now and do more of a grab and go. The number one thing that we're seeing when it comes to breakfast is not necessarily what you're including in your breakfast, but how you're presenting it and making sure you're setting the right expectations. So social media, again, a great place to do that. Review responses when people are mentioning your breakfast. Now let's look at the negative sentiment tag. So this one, odor. 65% of the time when odor is mentioned in a review, it's negative. Not a lot of people are coming on and saying, this hotel, as soon as I walked in, smelled great. But, an odor like cleanliness can be very subjective, right? Some people don't like that Lysol smell, that really clean smell. So this is something to definitely keep in mind and watch in your reviews and seeing if this is a trend for you. Bathroom, we're about getting a 50-50 split there. It could be any sort of protocols that you've changed throughout COVID. The pictures of your bathrooms are great. Towels is also an issue, especially with families, as we saw, is a huge search topic. And then lastly, price. So we know, obviously, inflation, ADR is at an all-time high. It's actually past 2019 levels right now, which is incredible. But what travelers are going to start doing is they're spending more money everywhere. And if they do not see the value or perceive the value that you're giving them, they are going to let you know about it on your review sites. And that really, really can be devastating if you're not monitoring that correctly. So price was definitely an interesting term to see there in the top 3 negative for Orlando. So got a lot of great data. How do we put it into a social strategy, right? That's the other piece of this. We have a social team dedicated to creating custom content for hotels, and these are just a couple examples. The first is a great example of a post for families. I go through hotels' social feeds all the time, and I'm continuing to see the same room type every single time. For a market that has where a lot of families are traveling to, they want to be able to see the space. A family of 4 is not going to get a lot out of a picture of your king size bed, but these double queens do a really, really great job of showing that. Nationwide travelers, right? So we already talked about it. Orlando, people are coming in from all over the place. Travel tips and tricks like this could go a very, very long way. If you get a more regional audience, maybe sharing something like a Spotify road trip playlist, that would be something more up your alley. But for Orlando, you definitely want to cater to nationwide travel. And then we talked about things to do. It is so important. Giving your travelers options. This was a great post that got over 400 impressions, just talking about the upcoming 4th of July weekend. But that location, as we saw, is big on the sentiment list, and it's a big search term as well. And then we included a free things to do here as well, which got a lot of likes and engagement on this post as well. So some great examples here, and some absolutely incredible data that we were able to pull from Google Analytics on our Reputation Social. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and bring DJ back in to give us just a little bit of insights on the Orlando market, because that's who he talks to, hotels like yourself.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much. That's great data. I appreciate that. Again, I'm the Hospitality Solutions Advisor for the Orlando and Kissimmee area. Been here about 2 years, been living in the area for about 5. And basically what I do is I meet with properties either in person or by Zoom every day. Many of the properties I find out are struggling, with the lack of staff or simply day-to-day issues that affect the online reputation of the property, and they need help. Basically time or even the lack of time becomes an issue when it comes to things that Ryan's been talking about, like social media posting or responding to reviews. I mean, it takes time to sit down, take time out of your day and do that. And a lot of times the employee level that you have doing that probably should be doing some other things, some higher level tasks within the what they're hired for. They're for the property. Basically, the agenda on these calls is simply, learn about your property or properties. If there's more than one, put an action plan together. We understand all hotels are unique. We look at the data like you see here, basically leverage that to build a solution, a custom solution for your property. Some of the things we're looking at here and that Ryan's mentioned, these tags or this sentiment information, really interesting. Just a couple of weeks back, I'm on a customer call with it's a hotel that's over here in East Orlando, over by the school. And we started digging into it, and odor was one of the issues. And we're like, okay, we're seeing a lot of good reviews here, but even in those good reviews, we've got some negative mentions. Let's find out what these guys are saying, because this is real time. And we get in there and we start digging around, and basically what it came out to was, okay, we know what's been going on, and at the same time now it's really in our faces. So it was basically smoking. Let's make sure we place some signs in the right areas in the hotel and point to where the smoking area is, and just a simple thing, but it's cool to have access to that data so easily. And Ryan, back to you.
And that is and what DJ explained, that is the perfect example of what leveraging this data to increase hotel revenue is all about. Obviously, we want to look at our market data, but as DJ mentioned, every single property on this call is unique. So trying to figure out what exactly your traveler is saying is a blueprint to just get more and more business to capture as much market share as possible. So DJ, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you all. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. I know we've got a couple groups as well as hotels to see, again, we are local. We're right here in Maitland. If you'd like, we can have DJ set up a call with you either virtually or even in person on property to go through some of this data, comb through this and see what guests are actually saying, put together a social strategy for you and maybe see where there's some opportunity and some gaps. So I'll just give everyone a quick moment to go ahead and engage with that poll. After this, I will let you know that I will be giving my contact information out in case you have any follow-up questions with that search data that we talked about. I'd be more than happy to share where we pulled that and where we got that. And then we'll have a recording of this. I know some of you came in a little bit later, so we'll certainly be sharing that recording with you as well if you'd like to share it with some of your properties. But I want to thank everyone. About to close the poll here. If anyone else wants to go ahead and take advantage of that. Okay, perfect. And again, here is my contact information in case you have any questions. Again, I want to thank DJ for taking the time, as well as everyone that attended our virtual roadshow, and have a fantastic rest of your week. Goodbye.